I come from a family that has been in textiles and clothing since 1926 in Sri Lanka. My grandfather, my parents, grandparents, and my parents came from Gujarat in India and subsequently migrated into Sri Lanka. My father entered the business at a very early age, I think 13 or 14 years old. And unfortunately, we lost him when I was 15 years old. I did my schooling in Sri Lanka, and then my tertiary education under the Madras University in India. And that's where I met my wife, Shaila. But having done my education in engineering, I came back to Sri Lanka. And during those days, your results took at least 3 or 4 months, right? And so I was at home, and my grandfather, who was still alive then, head of the family business and head of the family, came home and he said, "So son, what is it that you'd like to do with yourself?" And I said, "I trained as an engineer. I'd like to work as an engineer, and maybe after a while do my master's in engineering, or maybe business management." He said, "That's an interesting plan. But son," he tapped me on my shoulder and he said, "I have another plan for you. Come with me." And he actually put me on the shop floor of the manufacturing plant, and he said, "Son, this is where I'd like you to start." So that's how I got into what was the family business. 2 years later, we lost our grandfather, and our uncles were then running the family business. And so a lot of things changed in Sri Lanka. We were a closed economy, and then just before I came into the business, the economy opened, and there was goods coming in. In the closed economy, we as manufacturers were kings. Anything we made sold. They opened the economy, and the market got flooded, and the inventory went up, and business started sort of slowing down. And I worked diligently with my cousin and my brother to try to convince our uncles to change course. And it was challenging. It was extremely challenging, because this was a successful business, and these were successful businessmen. And so for almost 3 to 4 years, I tried, along with my brother, to sort of make that change. And then at one particular point of time, I said, "You know what? I think I should step back. This is their business. Let them run their business. Let me step back." So I went to my mother and told my mother, "Look, I want to step back from this business." And she said, "Look, your uncles have taken very good care of us after your father passed away. Go speak to him first." So when I spoke to my uncle, and I said, "I want to leave." He said, "Oh, are you going out of the country to meet some customers?" I said, "No, I want to leave the business." And he said, "What do you mean you want to leave the business? You're the next generation." And I said, "No, seriously, this is your business. You've spent 30, 35 years of your life. You've created what you've created, and I think you should just continue to do that. Give me your blessings and let me step back." He took 3 to 6 months before he came back to me and said, "Okay, go ahead and do what you want to do, and you have my blessings." So that's how I sort of stepped back out of the family business with something like 30,000 Sri Lankan rupees in my pocket, and with a saving that my father had made several years back with some insurance company. My younger brother, an accountant, worked in the family business as a financial controller. And the third younger brother was a mechanical engineer who worked outside the family business. He wasn't a part of the family business then. I pulled him out from where he was, and I said, "Would you like to join me? I'm setting up something new." And he said, "I'm drinking about 4 cups of tea every day, and maybe I can put myself to better use. Let me come and join you." So that's how I brought my younger brother, the engineer, in. 3 of us got together and joined the business. We started in '86 and then sort of moved on from there. We actually have about 85,000 people working with us in 15 different countries. We have 55 locations around the world. And we focused on intimate apparel, active and sportswear, and swimwear. Our primary customers are Victoria's Secret in the US and Nike. We are the single largest supplier to Victoria's Secret worldwide, and we are the second largest supplier of apparel to Nike. What's interesting is that all of this was done and under a framework, and I'd like to talk to you about that in a little while. The topic that Professor Randolph has given me is why family businesses really are the best. And I thought about this topic and I said, you know what, if I were to truly sort of address this, maybe I'd address it a little differently. And so I took the privilege to say, you know what, why family business really can be the best. And I'm going to show you literally in a few slides, right, what we've done in order to be able to be one of the best in the space that we are currently in. So I'd like to speak about 5 really aspects of it. But before I get to that, let me just share with you a little bit of our growth. In the first 15 years, it took us 15 years really to grow from 0 to $500 million. And then it took us 7 years to grow from 500 to $1 billion. And then it took us about 3.5 years to grow from $1 billion to 1.5 billion. But I think what is really important here is that right from the inception, I was very keen, even though we were in a small country, and we started a small business with $20,000 and 36 people in building a world-class company. And what did I mean by that? We wanted to be able to attract the best talent we had in the country. And we wanted to create the right environment in the business to be able to bring those people in. And so even though we were traditionally called people in the rag trade, we wanted the environment to be so good that those who would otherwise have gone into multinational companies, to foreign banks, actually came and worked with us. It wasn't easy, but we created the right environment in order to attract them. One of the things we did was empowered them to be able to do the work they need to do. I like to be given responsibility and like to be left alone to do what I was doing. And so right from the inception, that was the approach we took with everybody who worked with us. The other piece was focusing on technology and bringing the best technology into the company and ensuring that our manufacturing process and our technology was one of the best. The third thing was really working with iconic brands, making sure that maybe even if we entered the industry working and doing subcontract for some of the more value brands, migrating from there to better brands. So that was something that is important. But we got our initial luck is one piece of it. The other piece was good fortune, was to be associated with a company called Mast Industries, which is a sourcing arm of the Limited Inc. And they were looking for a joint venture in our part of the world. They came and met up with us, and we realized that with that relationship, we would be able to achieve our aspiration of establishing a world-class company. So we entered into that relationship with them, and that taught us a lot of stuff, which I'm going to talk to you about. One of the first things that that association really taught us was good management disciplines. The second was good HR practices. And so some of the richness that you see at MAS when you talk about the company is through the association with these partners. And a big part of it is the values that we brought into the business and the business ethics that we brought into the business, these values and these business ethics that came from our family, our grandparents to our parents, and from them to us. Due to the success of those joint ventures, we entered into new ventures with companies like Triumph International and also, I'm trying to get the slides up, we entered into relationships with Cotal's Textiles, and through those relationships really enriched our business. Establishing strong partnerships built on trust and mutual respect became one of the cornerstones of our foundation. Moving on from there and bringing in really professionals into the business. And there's a very interesting story here. When I did the first joint venture and shook hands with Martin Trust, the president of Master Industries, we just shook hands and did the deal. And down would descend upon me his vice president of marketing and vice president of legal and administration. And I looked over my shoulder and I realized I didn't have anybody else. And one of the things I realized very clearly was that if we did not have professionals of the same caliber that our partners have, we would not be equal partners in this business. So right from the inception, we brought in good professionals to run our business. So the business is owned, it's a family-owned business, but it's run professionally by really professionals of great caliber. The next important piece, a component that I'd like to really talk about was, we stayed very focused. There were opportunities in order to get into other product categories, and we were very clear that this was our business and that we should stay clearly focused. What happens is when your business is doing well and you have an extremely strong P&L, you get really tempted to do a lot of things. And it's tough to step back and hold yourself back and say, no, I'm going to invest in the core. I'm going to make the core strong and not really get distracted into real estate and tourism and all that kind of stuff. And that was one thing that we did and did very well. I think the other aspect also that I'd like to highlight is that we constantly invested in the core, whether it was manufacturing excellence or whether it was investing in an integrated supply chain to be able to support our customers, or whether it was design and product development. We did all of that to ensure that we really augmented the core of our business and looked at how we bring in initiatives like lean manufacturing and make that a part of our business. We realized at a particular point of time that speed to market was critical, and took the opportunity of actually spending a lot of time in Japan understanding the automobile industry, and then through that understanding really brought speed to market into our business. Followed up with innovation, realizing that it was not enough for us to be excellent at execution. That those who were winning business in the marketplace were actually those who brought newness in product and technology or brought innovation to the table. And I spent some time in the Silicon Valley in order to be able to understand what it takes for a company that has in its core wired as an engineering company, as a manufacturing company, what it takes for that company to really become an innovative company. And I realized there were two things that came through that discussion and those visits. One was you didn't have to do all the research yourself. This whole concept of open innovation was something that came up during those discussions. And that was the first one. I'm trying to remember the second one. It'll come in a minute. But as we developed and grew our business, we realized that it was important for us to add all of these things into the business in order to enrich it and provide a service to the customer. Another important aspect for us was actually the roles that each one of us played in the business. Because one was an accountant, he took on the financial side of the business. I was extremely good at customer relations, partner relations, and marketing, and so I took that part of it. And my brother, who was an engineer, took on product development. And so we had separate areas and separate clear roles in the business, and that helped enormously. I asked Tim this question as to how he aligned, the thinking and the approach and spoke in one voice, because we struggled with that at a particular time, even though we were in one country. And we realized that we needed to do that because otherwise we were confusing the senior leadership team. And so every Thursday, like a prayer, we meet from 9 to 12, and we have an agenda. We clearly list out what's important for us on the business side and also on the family side. And through that, we align our thinking and speak in one voice. And that has been enormously beneficial to us. We are, as a family, quite hands-on. If we take on a new initiative, one of us would lead it. We do have professionals working with us, and we will bring those professionals along with us, but we take that responsibility of actually giving leadership to that. One of the other things we did was also looked at how we brought the next generation in. It was not easy because they were all professionals. They were working for companies like PwC and working for other companies around the world. And for us to lure them in was quite challenging. When I spoke to my son, who was a consultant, and he was consulting with an IT company that was providing technology services to the financial sector, and he was working with Citibank and Fidelity Investments, and I spoke to him and said, look, what are your plans for the next 3 years? He came back and said immediately, without batting an eyelid, are you asking me when I'll join MAS? And I said, well, maybe. And then he turns around and he says, I don't think you have anything interesting for me in that business of yours. So I know. But after about 12 months, we were successful in lowering him into doing something responsible. Well, one of the things we've done is that we've told all of them that, it's fine for you to be a consultant at PwC or wherever else, but our business is manufacturing, and we want you to understand that. So they have started their career at the shop floor, working with the team members on the shop floor. And my son brought home 2 bras, and he said, I stitched these, okay? I want you now not to be critical. I know you are very finicky, right, about quality. But I had 5 that I was given, and 3 got rejected, and I've just about managed to get these 2 home. So our whole objective was for them to actually appreciate and value, right, the effort that is taken by those at the shop floor level, the team members on the shop floor, who truly are the people who add value to the product. I think what I'd like to sort of share with you, probably, which is the most important piece of our business, and that's this last piece, and which is the values of the family. Now, as a family business, one of the core values have been humility. And I don't know whether it is the influence of the Mahatma Gandhi on my father, because he wore clothes that were made out of homespun yarn for many, many years, right? I still remember seeing him in that attire. And I don't know whether because of that was an influence that came from him to us, but that's a core philosophy and principle or value of the family. The other piece, which is also very important to us, is trust and mutual respect. We would not have been able to build this business without that, because all the joint ventures that we entered into, right, were with companies that were much larger than us. You're talking of a $2 million business or a $6 million business doing a joint venture with a $1.4 billion company, done on the basis of trust and mutual respect. And the other piece, which is very critical, going along with that, is treating people with respect and dignity. And whether that person is a team member on the shop floor, or whether that person is an executive of the company, right? And whatever the role they're playing across the board, teaching them with respect and dignity. Now, one of the reasons why we were extremely keen on ensuring that our next generation works on the shop floor is because we wanted them to be able to have an empathy and a value for the work that is done by the team members on the shop floor. Because we really value that aspect, which is treating people with respect and with dignity. And of course, the other piece, which is having credibility. If you are not honest and you don't have integrity, you don't have credibility, and business is tough to do when you don't have credibility, whether it is with individuals or whether it is with institutions, whether they're private institutions or state institutions. Right? And when you have credibility, whether it's the customs or whether it is the ministry that approves your investments, you begin to realize that things move much faster because of that. So for us, those three were really, really important. And these were values that we actually incorporated in the business. And they are values that I embodied in the executives who also work with us. For me, when we started this presentation, I started with the history. Now, generally when people start their presentations, they actually start with their vision and their mission, and then they talk to you about the rest of their journey. I decided that I'd rather talk to you about our past and our history to give you context, and then end up with our vision statement. The vision statement clearly says to inspire the people who work with us, to give them the right kind of environment so that they bring out their best, to empower them so that they are that much better at contributing not only to the company, but also to their families and also to the community. Right? The other piece, which is important for us, and that is to ensure that we have the courage to fail, to think out of the box, and to innovate. The third piece, which is don't just go there and add value. Think of how you can really create new value, even if it means changing your business model. Go out there and look at how you do that. And actually, the final piece is extremely important, and which is respecting humanity. Now, wherever we have gone, in whichever country we have established ourselves, right, the first thing is respecting the people who work with us and treating them with dignity. And whichever community we go to, wherever we locate our plants, we ensure that we treat that community with respect and dignity, because it takes time to win their trust. Just because you go there and establish your plant and give employment to their youth doesn't make you a citizen of that village or that hamlet or that community. You have to earn that respect. And you earn that respect. To earn that respect, it takes you 3 to 5 years. But respecting that community. And finally, the core purpose. Extending from respecting your people, extending from respecting the community is truly respecting humanity and taking it to that level. So when we look at our business, we think about these aspects. If we get into this country, what is the kind of business that we can do? Can we live by the values that we have? Can we live by the business ethics that we have? Can we create the right environment where we respect the people who work with us? Can we create the right environment? Or can we be a part of a community and treat them with respect and dignity? And finally, be clear to that purpose of respecting humanity. We employ almost about 65,000 or maybe 70,000 women in our company out of the 85,000 people working with us. And it was one thing for us to treat them with respect and dignity as individuals working in our business at the shop floor. We realized at a particular point of time that we needed to do more than that. And this was almost about 12 or 14 years back. So we actually approached them and said, we would like to do something more, and where would you like us to help you out here? And interestingly enough, they asked for two things. We thought it would be in the space of health, but it turned out to be in the space of education. And they said, could you teach us English? Could you teach us computers? And that started with the empowering of our team members at that level in teaching them English and computers. I recall at a particular event when I was asked to speak at the UN, the permanent ambassador to Norway making this comment, this statement, and I found that to be very interesting. He said, you educate the mothers and you educate the nation. And so for me, as soon as they said, look, we'd like you to teach us English and computers, we said, okay, this is good, because if you educate the mothers, then you'll educate the children. That was one aspect of it. We also looked at what skills they require for the advancement of their careers. We looked at what other education they require. One of the things they struggled with was managing their finances. And so we brought in HSBC to provide us the resources and took them through this whole program of managing your money. We also found health and hygiene to be another aspect that was important for us to address, because we were located in villages in different parts of the country, and also in other parts in other countries, also in villages. And we felt health and hygiene was important. We brought in Unilever to give us resources in order to be able to teach them health and hygiene. So by doing all of that, we were able to sort of empower them. One of the other things we did was that when we went across to Japan and learned this whole concept of lean, right? We brought that concept across, lean manufacturing, into our business. And one of the key things about lean manufacturing is to take waste out of the system, right? The other piece is actually creating an environment and helping people solve their problems, right? So when we did that and created one of the challenges we had was people didn't surface their problems. Creating the environment to do that was quite a challenge. We needed our executive team to step back and create that right environment in order to help them identify, because they were the people who identified the problems, help them identify these problems and surface the problems. We taught them tools in order to solve those problems themselves, empowering them at that level. The challenge then became not the team members, but the middle management, because you were taking power from them and empowering, those under them. We created a program which we called the Women Go Beyond program, helping women working with us go beyond being a seamstress, contributing to the company, contributing to the community, and contributing to the nation.